Admiral Zexathara stood before the towering holographic display in the command chamber of the Eternal Dominion, her 6 eyes scanning the tactical readout with practiced efficiency. The massive dreadnought, spanning 12 kilometers from bow to stern, had served as the flagship of the hegemony's conquest fleet for over 3 centuries. Behind her stretched a formation that had broken the will of 47 different species across the galaxy. "Another primitive world, Admiral," reported Navigation Officer Krill, his mandibles clicking with barely concealed amusement. "Third spiral arm, yellow star system. They call themselves humans." Zexathara's secondary arms manipulated the control interface, zooming in on the blue-green planet. Standard orbital scans revealed the usual markers of a developing civilization: electromagnetic radiation, primitive nuclear technology, chemical propulsion systems. Nothing the hegemony hadn't seen 1,000 times before. "Population?" she inquired, her voice carrying the weight of countless victories. 7 billion. Single homeworld. No interstellar presence beyond their immediate star system. Krill paused, reviewing the data. "Admiral, they haven't even achieved faster than light travel." A ripple of laughter passed through the bridge crew. The Vorthak communications officer hissed in amusement, while the crystalline ethereals chimed in harmonic mockery. It was almost insulting. The High Council had dispatched their most powerful fleet against what appeared to be barely more than cave dwellers playing with fire. "Standard protocol," Zexathara commanded. "Broadcast the ultimatum of submission. Give them 1 rotation to surrender unconditionally." The transmission was sent across all human communication frequencies, translated into their primitive languages, by the fleet's xenolinguistic computers. The message was simple, refined through centuries of conquest: submit to the hegemony or face complete annihilation. What came back defied all expectations. "Admiral," the communications officer's voice carried a note of uncertainty. "They're responding." "Of course they are. Begging for mercy, no doubt." "No, Admiral. They're laughing." The bridge fell silent. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to the ultimatum with laughter. Fear, desperation, attempts at negotiation, these were normal. But laughter? "Put it through," Zexathara ordered. The human transmission filled the bridge with an alien sound. Dozens of voices joined in what could only be described as mirth. When it subsided, a single voice spoke in heavily accented galactic standard. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Forces. We've received your invitation. Our response is as follows: come and take it." The transmission cut. Krill's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, surely they don't understand the scope of our—" "They understand perfectly," Zexathara interrupted, studying the tactical display with renewed interest. "Initiate planetary bombardment. 3 dreadnoughts, full conversion beam array. Let's see how long their humor lasts." The first wave of hegemony ships moved into bombardment position, their massive conversion beams charging with enough power to crack continents. As they prepared to fire, proximity alarms began screaming across the fleet. "Admiral!" The sensor operator's voice cracked with disbelief. Multiple contacts emerging from the planet's surface. Small craft, but hundreds of them. Thousands. On the tactical display, Earth's surface erupted like a disturbed hive. Ships no larger than hegemony shuttles poured into space, their primitive fusion drives burning white-hot against the void. They shouldn't have posed any threat to the mighty fleet, but there were so many of them, and they were moving with a coordination that defied explanation. "Impossible," Krill muttered. "Our intelligence indicated no significant military fleet." The human ships moved in perfect formation, not toward the hegemony fleet as expected, but around it. They spread out in a complex 3-dimensional pattern that seemed almost artistic. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "they're surrounding us, but their weapons are completely inadequate against our shields. What are they planning?" Zexathara watched the display with growing unease. In her experience, civilizations that laughed at overwhelming force usually had a reason. "Begin the bombardment. Now." The first conversion beam lanced down toward Earth's surface, carrying enough energy to vaporize a mountain. It struck nothing. The beam simply dissipated as if it had hit some invisible barrier. Impossible, Zexithera breathed. No primitive civilization possesses that level of shielding technology. More beams fired, with identical results. Earth remained unharmed beneath a protective field that shouldn't have existed. Admiral, the communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the human fleet." Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again, but now it carried an edge that made Zexithera's chitin crawl. "Hegemony Fleet, you have just attempted to commit genocide against our homeworld. We take that personally." Suddenly, the human ships began to move, not toward the hegemony vessels, but in seemingly random directions throughout the system. They scattered like seeds on cosmic wind, and wherever they went, space itself seemed to change. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice rose to a shriek. "The humans, they're not just using primitive drives, they're manipulating space-time itself. Those aren't fusion engines, they're gravity wave generators." The terrible realization hit Zexithera like a physical blow. The humans hadn't laughed because they were ignorant of the hegemony's power. They had laughed because they were so far beyond it that the threat was meaningless. "Full retreat," she ordered. "All ships, emergency FTL jump. Now." But it was too late. The human vessels had woven a web of gravitational distortions throughout the system. When the hegemony ships tried to engage their faster-than-light drives, they found themselves trapped in a maze of warped space-time that made escape impossible. Admiral Chen's final transmission reached them as the human ships began to converge. "You came here expecting to find primitives playing with fire. What you found was a species that learned to play with the fundamental forces of reality itself. We've been waiting for you to arrive." The tactical display showed the truth in terrifying clarity. Earth wasn't a primitive world. It was bait. The humans had deliberately maintained the appearance of a pre-spaceflight civilization while developing technology so advanced it made the hegemony look like the primitives. As gravitational fields began tearing the mighty fleet apart ship by ship, Zexithera understood with crystal clarity why no other expedition had ever returned from human space. It wasn't because they had been defeated. It was because they had been studied. The last thing the Admiral saw before her ship's hull began to collapse under impossible gravitational stress was a human face on the view screen. Not angry or vindictive, but filled with something far more terrifying. Scientific curiosity. In the end, the fleet that had conquered 47 civilizations learned the most important lesson in the galaxy. Never assume that a species pointing primitive weapons at the stars isn't simultaneously preparing to rewrite the laws of physics. They just never lived long enough to share that knowledge.